There, John. Yeah, let me give you a couple things here at the top of Tim Cook's agenda going into 2025. First of all, dodging those President-elect Trump's tariffs, as he did for Apple in Trump's first term. And next, China, specifically getting Apple Intelligence off the ground there. But let's start with tariffs. I think that's the most important one. Trump coming into office in a few weeks, promising blanket tariffs up to 60% on goods from China. That had hit Apple the hardest of any mega cap tech company. Most products from Apple, including a majority of iPhones, are made in China. How Cook managed to dodge tariffs in the first Trump term, though? Well, he developed a relatively cozy relationship with Trump as his peers, such as Jeff Bezos, took more antagonistic stances, and that all culminated in 2019 when Cook gave Trump a tour of an Apple factory in Texas. That factory already existed, but Cook showed Trump a new model of Mac computers getting made there, and that turned into a win-win scenario for both sides. Trump got to show everyone Apple making things here in the United States, and then the following month, Apple got relief from tariffs on imports from China. Ahead of Trump taking office again, he said Cook came and dined with him in Mar-a-Lago a few weeks ago. No mention from Apple or Trump himself on what that means as far as tariffs go. So early in the year, here's what to watch for. Keep an eye out for announcements from Apple related to job creation or manufacturing here in the United States. That could be what Apple offers in terms of getting tariff relief. Next, let's talk about China. Still a lot of competition going on there from homegrown competitor Huawei. But beyond that, Apple needs to get the government to approve Apple Intelligence so it can launch on iPhones in that country. I asked Tim Cook about this on his last earnings report off one of his recent trips to China. He didn't have a comment, but we do know talks keep going on. And Apple does need Apple Intelligence to launch there for Chinese customers who are more obsessed with tech specs. And it will have to partner with another company like Baidu on artificial intelligence, since OpenAI, which is the partner here in the United States, is blocked in China, guys.
All right, Steve Kovac, thank you for bringing us that story. You know, it occurs to me that the tariff threats are not only threatening China. The future of trade with our neighbors to the north seem rather uncertain because President-elect Trump has threatened to impose 25% tariffs on products coming in from Canada. Several Canadian political leaders have responded with economic threats of their own. Earlier this month on Power Lunch, the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, said he would go to the extent of cutting off energy exports to the United States if necessary. Now to discuss her thoughts, Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta and the leader of Canada's United Conservative Party. Premier Smith, it's great of you to join us today. First of all, I note that when you talk about cutting off energy exports, Alberta exports more than $127 billion. That would be 56% of all of the oil that the United States imports, double that from Mexico, Saudi Arabia, or Iran if you were to combine all of that. So when you look at that amount, is that even realistic to cut off, say, Alberta's energy exports to the United States?
I certainly don't think it is realistic, and nor do I think that that would make us a very good neighbor, quite frankly. I have a little bit of a difference of opinion with my Ontario counterpart, and maybe it's because we are the principal supplier of oil and gas to the United States. We know how vitally important it is for American energy dominance that we're able to be a partner in that. The Americans have, you've seen an increase of your production and export to 13 million barrels a day, but America still uses 20 million barrels a day. And so we're able to provide a lot for the domestic consumption, which keeps the price of gasoline low. We've been told that if a 25% tariff does indeed come in across the board, it would increase the price of gasoline by $1 a gallon, which I don't think that American consumers want. I don't think that would be in keeping with the second objective of the Trump administration, which is to address inflation and keep prices low. So we're hoping to be able to talk about how Canada is a great friend, great partner. We have a wonderful, quite balanced trade relationship compared to other nations in the world. And we think that if we took a North American strong approach so that we could get into a position of collective dominance, I think that that's actually a great partnership that should continue. And I hope that we can avoid tariffs altogether.
You sent a message out in response to Donald Trump's truth post about the trade deficit with Canada. And you pointed out the jobs and the way that the energy exports support the price of gasoline in the United States. But also, you pointed out that grain and livestock, which of course go into food costs, which was one of the big factors that we saw in this election, as well as timber, which has to do with building materials. And as you know, housing supply in the United States is rough and hard to come by. And in response to hurricanes and wildfires, those rebuilding materials drive up inflation. All of that, it's a great pragmatic argument. Do you have any sense whether you're being heard from the incoming administration?
Well, I hope we are, because that has been the relationship that Canada's had with the U.S. for some time. I mean, let's face it, our economy is only 1/10 the size of the American economy, but it's pretty remarkable that we are the largest buyer of American products. Mexico is second, and we beat Germany, Italy, France, the UK, and Vietnam combined in the amount that we buy from America. And part of it is this partnership, that we have a lot of products that we produce, whether it's livestock or grain or timber or oil and gas or critical minerals. The Americans use that in the value added and creation of products, and then we buy a lot of those products back. And so that is one of probably the most successful trade partnership in the entire world. And I don't see that a trade war benefits American consumers, certainly doesn't benefit Canadian consumers. And I think we'd be much stronger together, especially with this latest move from China to ban some critical minerals, germanium, gallium, antimony. Guess what? You can get those from Canada. You can get one of those products from BC, another from Ontario, and another from Quebec. Uranium as well, vitally important for energy security, increasingly as we're looking at small modular reactors, but also defense. You can get that from Saskatchewan and Alberta. And so we really feel like this is a partnership that we should continue to talk about the strengths and the positives where we both benefit, and hopefully be able to avoid tariffs.
So, Premier Smith, I'm curious, because a couple years ago, you had the Alberta Sovereignty Act, and it seems like you would argue you're trying to protect your province from federal overreach, right? Protect your economy. At the same time, there seems to be this sweeping move in a lot of countries and economies to keep from being treated unfairly and to make deals that benefit them. Trump is trying to do something similar. How do you balance the desire for free trade with the desire to protect the interests of the economy over which you're presiding?
Well, I think the thing to understand is our country is a little bit different than the U.S. In the U.S., a lot of land and resources is owned by the federal government and private landowners. In our country, the resources and the land are owned by the provinces. So the Alberta government is the owner of 85% of the oil and gas in our province. It's we've got 1 trillion barrels of oil in place, 200 billion that's recoverable at today's technology. We've got over 200 trillion cubic feet of gas. We've got pore space to be able to bury CO2 so that we can address emissions. And so because we are the owner as a province, it is in our interest to be able to assert our ownership and look for more ways to be able to get our product to our best friend and trading partner, which is the United States. We have a number of pipelines that go into the U.S. We're able to export alone 4.3 million barrels per day. We'd love to be able to double that so that the U.S. economy would then be able to export to their friends and allies internationally. And that's the kind of partnership that I think we should be talking about.
Okay. And so do you see openings with the Trump administration to do that, even within this environment of the president-elect saying that Canada is treating the U.S. unfairly?
I think so. I mean, I look back at our trade statistics going back for the past 20 years. There was a decade between about 2010 and 2020 where Canada actually had the deficit with the United States. The real big difference in the U.S.-Canada trade relationship more recently is commodity prices. And when you look at if we're able to be a secure, safe supplier of commodities to the Americans, that just benefits American consumers. It benefits American businesses, especially when you look at China controlling 80% of the supply chain of some key minerals, all of which are available in Canada. So if we can make that argument that the trade surplus when it comes to the manufactured goods is actually very balanced. The difference is that we're able to provide the key source of materials that go into making all of those great American products. And that's why I keep on making sure that that message is coming through loud and clear. I don't think that either of our countries benefits from a tariff war. I think we're much stronger together, and we want to be that partner.
Okay. See how it plays out in 2025. Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, Canada. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, January's arrival usually signals a fresh start, whether that's playoffs for your favorite football team or maybe even a reset for your stock portfolio. After the break, our trader will give us his playbook for 2025, some offense, a little defense, and of course, some special teams. Market Navigator is next.